Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Well, if you want to know how messed up a football program can be, check out that sweatshirt. Okay, 49ers football. Is there anything else they play?
Not really.
So they have to tell the personnel what sport they're in?
Absolutely. Well, after last year, yeah, they do.
I mean, really? Tell me you got that on discount.
I think I might have it. I've had it for years. Back when I bought this, I'm not sure they were playing football. I think they were 2-14.
Has it been washed?
Yeah, a couple
I'm
times.
just asking questions the audience is curious about. All right? You got a bad rep. All right. So, here we are, heading into Final Four weekend. What's your team's draft pick this time around?
Where do they pick? 11.
11, okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Just asking, you know. There'll be a lot of intrigue around your pick. I'm sure they'll pick somebody nobody ever heard of.
Probably won't be offensive line where they're much needed.
Or
the defensive line.
Or they may trade for Trey Lance.
Contact the CFL and trade for him.
Hey. And give up draft picks for it.
And give up 3 first-round picks. Yeah, what the heck.
Selecting for the 49ers, representing the Toronto Argonauts.
No, it's not Rocket Ishmael.
Representing the Montreal Alouettes. Hey, great. Was it the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the Edmonton Elk?
Yeah, there was a
Calgary Stampeders.
I was gonna say Calgary. Yep.
British Columbia Lions.
Don't they have the Saskatchewan Rough Riders? I think is another one.
The Ottawa Roughnecks.
That's it. Yep.
Because they were also the Rough Riders, and they changed it to Roughnecks. Yeah. The Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah. Yep. Remember Hamilton had one. Yeah.
There you go. The Canadian Football League. Which, by the way, ESPN does carry their games. In what is it? June, July, August?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there was.
I mean, there's usually a couple names in there you sit back and recognize, and wow, okay.
Yeah, Flutie played for what? Edmonton Eskimos? Was that it?
Flutie,
and
he played for the British Columbia Lions.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the other Warren Moon.
Yeah, Warren Moon played for Edmonton.
Yeah,
Flutie played for British Columbia. Didn't he play for a little bit for Toronto?
Maybe.
Right. Joe Theismann played for Toronto.
I do remember that.
So the Bears, by the way, did you see the Bears thing?
No.
Okay. They bought. So the Bears buy Arlington Park from Churchill Downs. Churchill Downs was the owner of Arlington Park, the big racetrack. Now, as you see, racetrack property is incredibly valuable because racetrack property is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So if you want a perfect example of it, go to SoFi Stadium, the home of the Rams and the Chargers, and now where in the Intuit Dome is for the Clippers. And that used to be Hollywood Park. The Forum is still there, which was the home for a long time for the Lakers and the Kings. No longer, obviously, they're downtown at crypto.com. But the Forum is still there. They've got SoFi there. They've got the Intuit Dome there. They've got NFL Network there. They have NFL.com there. It's a campus. And it's all there, and that used to be Hollywood Park. That's an example of racetrack property. That's why when Dick Girardi and I went to Santa Anita on Super Bowl Sunday, what struck everybody is that everybody around that track is worried that it's going to be sold because it's a huge plot of land. And to be honest, I mean, and it's not, it wouldn't be for sports probably. They think it would be for neighborhoods, like rich, because your friends.
That's right. My people.
Well, it's good for you to admit it. I think it's the first step in recovery. But I will hold this up for the camera, right? Because it's not just the property; it is how beautiful the area is. Okay, and this is what strikes you. Okay, right? Can they see that on the camera?
Pretty much, yeah.
Back, forward.
Move up a little bit.
Move up a
See if
little.
it'll get the blur away. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Hey, that's Santa Anita. Those are the San Gabriel Mountains in the background. The Rose Bowl's on the other side of those mountains. Right? You wouldn't want to buy a property there?
Oh, I think you would.
See, that's what they worry about. So now back to the Bears. They bought Arlington Park. And Penn State football, their hotel was out near Arlington Park when they played Northwestern a couple of years ago. Just to give everybody a gauge about how far out it is. And the Bears went through this entire presentation. Of course, Kevin Warren's in charge. I wish them the best of luck.
I'm glad he said it.
I wish the Bears all the best of luck. And finally, it's like, we're going to build downtown. They didn't sign anything, but we're going to build downtown. Until yesterday. Now they're like, we own this piece. So I said to Dick and I were talking at Santa Anita. We were talking about the Bears situation because of the racetrack. I said, they want to build downtown near Grant Park in the museum area, which is traditional. That's fine. I said, but why do you own this piece of property out here? What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Now, do you want to, you could certainly have it rezoned for housing. I mean, because you have to, like I was talking about Santa Anita probably doesn't need much rezoning because they do have neighborhoods around it to begin with.
Absolutely.
Right. The NFL drafts all film team. What are we doing? Right,
boy.
Like, do people actually read this stuff?
Lord.
I mean, does anybody read that? Look, I have no idea. But what are they going to do with it? Well, now they're sitting there going, well, we may go out there. It's
Sure.
like, okay. Did you hear the story? I don't want to get into the details of the story because I think it would be wrong for me to do it. But about Pat McAfee, did you see that?
Depends on which story.
He repeated a story that was online about an Ole Miss student.
Yes.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Yes.
And it turns out the story is not true. And evidently they're going to sue because she's not a public figure.
No, and that's exactly what his grounds for.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this is, People will ask me, like, you don't get into many controversial topics. You don't get into, politics, things like that. No.
Hey, no, you're not supposed to get into the second part, especially. Absolutely not.
Right. You just stay out of it. Now you keep wanting to talk religion all the time. I don't understand. It's an interesting group you're with. No, I'm just kidding.
People hear my last name and they say, "Oh."
Yeah, I know. I always hear it in the hallway. Oh, Lord.
That might be the nicest way people have said
it. I try to talk to students in classes and tell them, look, you need to do these shows, whatever your personality is.
Sure.
But you have to be careful with today's internet, because there are times you sit back and say to yourself, is that true?
Uh-huh.
Without knowing the facts. And this was one of those, is it true? And it wasn't. Now, I think it was like a 2-minute segment that he did about this topic. And when you're on for hours and hours, but this is something that I don't know what's going to happen with him. Because his 5-year deal is with ESPN is what's it, $85 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an issue. How about that? It's a big issue. That they're going to have to overcome. I mean, Don Imus couldn't overcome some comments he made a few years ago.
No, yeah, I remember
that. All right. I'm not going to go too much further on that because one thing I'm doing is I'm not talking about what the issue is.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to anybody involved to talk about it, but I'm just mentioning it. It's out there. Bruce Feldman did his mock draft. Everybody's doing a mock draft. Cam Ward to Tennessee at 1. Cleveland. Oh, that's right. I think I was supposed to do the Giants thing last night. Oh, well. Cleveland, Abdul Carter. Although they were supposed to call me. They never did. They didn't call me. Back with them. Oh, well. I'll have to check back with those guys.
They were too busy having contract negotiations with the...
Yeah, Abdul Carter to Cleveland. I talked to the Cleveland people, and they were really...
Yeah, it makes the most sense. I think you can transition quarterback right now where you're at. You have Watson. Is that ideal? Not necessarily. You have Pickett. Is that ideal? Not necessarily. But I think you have guys that have starter experience that can get you through a year.
Well, to be honest with you, I mean, who's to say they don't go out next year and they sign Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, exactly. That's why. That's what I mean.
Him being released maybe by Atlanta,
That's what I mean. You can get through a year.
Right.
I think to me, you line up Abdul Carter opposite of Myles Garrett. Tell me a better team that has a better pass rush than that, Philadelphia included.
They have the Giants going with Shedeur Sanders. Now, this is an interesting pick one way or the other. I think it's one of the two Colorado guys. It's either him or Travis Hunter.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, obviously.
All right. Mason Graham to Jacksonville at 5, Bruce has.
Yeah.
Jalen Walker to Georgia. I really like him as a player. To the Raiders at 6. The Jets, Armand Membo from Missouri, offensive lineman. Carolina, Mikael Williams from Georgia. The Saints, Will Campbell from LSU. There's been a lot of talk about his arm length. Ashton Genty to the Bears at 10. The 49ers take Trey Lance. Jahdae Barron, a corner from Texas. You have no reaction. Amarian Hampton, the running back from North Carolina at 12. Will Johnson, the Dolphins, at 13. And Tyler Warren at Indianapolis at 14.
It's interesting to see how far. First of all, I think Warren's going to go higher, a little bit higher, but I also It's interesting to see where Johnson has slipped down to, and I say down. He's 13, but
he's a good player.
Exactly. To me, every time I've seen him play, there's nothing that I can look at and say, "Oh, he's got a flaw here. He's got a flaw here." He's a great player.
Steelers at 21. What do you think?
Steelers at 21. Oh, they almost.
This is Bruce Feldman's opinion.
They almost have to go quarterback here.
Jackson Dart.
They do take Dart. Yeah,
that's what he's got there.
Yeah, even if you sign Rodgers, you got to go quarterback. Rodgers isn't playing 10 years. Yeah, I don't think, at least.
I mean, I played 10 games.
You're not wrong.
Let's see. And Malachi Starks to the Ravens at 27. Let's see. And we'll get to the Eagles here. Kenneth Grant to the Bills at 30. I know there are a lot of Bills fans around here. And the Eagles at, oh, that's right. He claims they're going to trade it.
Okay.
He claims that the Eagles will trade the 32 pick to the Raiders for the 37 pick, the fourth-round pick, and the Raiders would take Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State.
That's who I actually think would fit in Philadelphia. Obviously, you have that third guy in Dotson now, but it wouldn't hurt to have another receiver.
And he's got Jordan Birch, by the way, going to the Eagles at 37. I guess, geez, how deep does he goes up to 37.
So he has every team picking, basically.
Right, that's what he did. Hey, why not? You know, everybody does their own mock draft.
Absolutely.
I saw your mock draft. It was like he had Steve Spurrier going third.
Not even sure I put Steve Spurrier third in a mock draft of coaches.
Yeah.
Especially not in the NFL.
Yeah.
Good Lord, was he terrible in the NFL. Well, the best part about it was...
He won some games for you. He also was your punter.
He was. The absolute best is when first of all, it was Florida, professional Florida Gators. They signed everybody from Florida. And I think they blew out the Cardinals or something in week 1. And Steve's like, it's going to take a little bit of time for people to adjust to me. Well, it didn't take too long because the next week Andy Reid destroyed them.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushed them. And that was about the end of Steve Spurrier in the NFL.
Right. Let's see. Scott Docterman of The Athletic wrote an article about Big Ten basketball. Big Ten basketball this year had 8 qualifiers for the tournament. If you've heard Dick Girardi and I say this once, you probably heard us say it 20 times over the past year, that we thought the Big Ten was good, not great. Now, in this particular year, they're the number 2 conference to the SEC, which was great. And in terms of units, acquired, the SEC is going to end up with 35. The Big Ten is going to be second with 21, right? Essentially, because of the 6-year deal, they end up being about $2 million a unit. So in other words, when Penn State was as I pointed out to people many times, when Penn State was in the tournament 2 years ago, they earned the Big Ten about $4.2 million. Right? Well, yeah, but I know everybody's against the program. I got it. Okay. Here. Take a business class. Okay, so just one. Okay.
Economics used to be required. Back in the day, it was.
Take a business class. I know you love your sport. Just take one business class.
That goes hand in hand with sports.
I know you love.
You ever hear of John Ourand?
I know.
It goes together with sports.
I know you love your sport, whatever it happens to be. But in order to understand the big picture, okay, there's a big picture here.
It goes hand in hand.
Okay, there's a big picture.
Scott Docterman, by the way, one of the veteran writers.
Oh, Scott's a great guy.
Yeah, former Hawkeye beat writer.
Yep.
Just an absolute great guy.
So what he did was he sat back and he did a lot of research on where the Big Ten is and where they need to go. In the 15 years before Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, Big Ten programs had signed just 7 top 10 prospects based on composite rankings. Now, that's 15 years. Now,
yeah.
Rutgers, because of chemistry problems, and look, no offense, the other 11 players in that roster, there are some that are good, and most aren't. There are a couple guys on that team, besides Bailey and Harper, I think are good players.
Yeah, just not enough. Yeah.
But they only have a couple of other players
Exactly.
besides Bailey and Harper that were good players. I mean, it really was like Penn State should have beaten them twice. Not just once. They should have beaten them twice. Here's the other part. Chicago and Minneapolis, St. Paul produced 8 top 10 players over that span. Not one picked a Big Ten school. Remember, for years, what was the pipeline? Chicago to Champaign,
absolutely.
Chicago to Champaign. Minneapolis, St. Paul, they don't stay home. In fact, one of the biggest problems Minnesota has had as a basketball program is check the starting lineup out for Wisconsin. And don't just look at like names and heights and class. Look at the hometowns. There's a lot of Minnesota players on the Wisconsin roster. I mean, at least over the years, that's the way it's been. 2025 class. The Big Ten has just 2 5-star signees. Shooting guard Elijah Aarons, right? He's going to go to USC. And Michigan combo guard Trey McKinney. Aarons is number 7 in the composite, and McKinney is 17. They're the Big Ten's only incoming freshman ranked in the top 30. Duke and Houston have combined for 7 top 25 recruits. Arizona, UConn, Arkansas, Louisville have 2 apiece. Now, one of them for UConn, by the way, is the Indiana Player of the Year. It probably would have helped if the head coach for Indiana showed up more than once. I will leave it at that, not mentioning names. 2 of the top 4 transfers have landed in the Big Ten. Bennett Sturtz to Iowa following his coach, Donovan Dent, the point guard from New Mexico, going to UCLA. But Purdue and Michigan State are built on what? Homegrown talent. Michigan State had 4 starters, homegrown. Purdue had all 5. They were 1 and 2 in the Sweet 16 in homegrown talent. Purdue last year added exactly no transfers. Not one player on their roster last year was a transfer. Okay? Michigan State had 2 transfers, right? Both played, by the way. Both played. Fiddler, in fact, I thought played pretty well for them. Okay? But they were there they weren't starters. They were there to fill gaps. Now, you know Trey Holloman's put his name into the transfer portal. I was a bit surprised by that.
Same.
Xavier Booker put his name in. I expected that because he had really fallen with the emergence of a couple of guys, Kohler, Cooper, and most especially Cohen Carr. Now, you knew Carr was going to play, but this is where I give Carr a lot of credit and I give Michigan State a lot of credit. A year ago, he was a dunker, okay? And I'm talking spectacular. But that's what he was. This year, he's a basketball player. You look at his ability. He obviously worked really hard on his shot in the offseason. He has now become a rather competent three-point shooter. He's become a guy that was in the 30s at the free throw line. Was at 70% this year at the free throw line. He obviously worked his backside off to become a better shooter. All credit to Cohen Carr. This Painter told everybody at the press conference, we've just stayed the same path as we have before. Now, when he's talking about bringing in top talent, Caden Mingo, by the way, is a top 50 guy. I mean, he's coming into the Big Ten. He's going to Penn State. What's Mingo, 47? Something like that. Yeah. Right. Now, Purdue was the conference's only team to rank in the top 12 in offensive efficiency, but it was 300th in possessions per 40 minutes. And these are all things. Dick did a great job when this first came out, the Ken Pom rankings, right? He said, Steve, you ought to take a look at this. And he'd send it to me. And like, wow. Like breaking down everything. Dick was the first analyst in the country to really, no question in my mind, he's the first analyst in the country that was breaking down the numbers based on the Ken Pom numbers. Then he got me introduced to it. Now we talk about it, and selectively, but we'll talk about points per possession. We'll talk about, we've always talked about how many possessions were left in a game. We've always done that. But who's a quick-paced team, who's not a quick-paced team, all these things that we've talked about. So when Penn State played Purdue, we talked about their offensive efficiency is usually good, but they're not a fast-paced team. And Penn State sped them up and ran them out back in December. But Dick is the one that got me going on that. I did not know really anything about that until he introduced it to me, and now it's part of the routine and regimen I use to get ready for games. Doesn't mean we're going to use it every time. There's a lot of information that you have in front of you don't use, but it's there in case you need it, right? And Dick's the one that got me going on that part of it. The NBA issues warnings to Ja Morant and Buddy Hield over hand gestures, but there'll be no discipline. That's great. Did anybody see it? No. Nobody saw it? Nobody watches Sports Center anymore? No. Okay, good.
No.
Tom Izzo said, when I came into this league, winning the Big Ten championship was the greatest thing in the world. Because you grind through 20 games, that's a grind. You can win 3 games of the Big Ten tournament and get lucky. You can win 4 games and get to a Final Four. It's impressive. But it's not like the grind of 20 games that we've just done playing. People, unfortunately, think we barely play basketball until the end of March. Okay? I'll get to that in a moment because that's a great statement. The road to a league title and ultimately NCAA success, he writes, is much more difficult now, as how many times have I pointed out? When the West Coast people came in, okay, everybody's job in the Big Ten got more difficult. When the West Coast people came in, their jobs got more difficult. Eric Musselman has proposed that the league should examine 3-game road trips like the NBA. Now, this, I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, for example, where do you play your 3 games in a row? That's the question. Other coaches have suggested more travel during a school's winter break, starting league action as early or shortening the mandated scheduling principle of 2 preparation days to 1. Now, the latter part's the one I'm in favor of. It made 0 sense to me other than garnering Marriott points. To play on a Saturday at UCLA and then to play at USC on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
When that came out in September, I mean, because we already knew that Penn State was playing at UCLA and at USC. We already knew that. Just a question of when it was going to be. And it turned out to be Super Bowl Sunday weekend. I assumed it would – I shouldn't say assumed. I guessed. My guess was, you know what, they'll play like Thursday, Saturday, or they'll play Saturday, Monday. And then it came out, and Penn State's playing Saturday, Tuesday. Well, it turned out like all those trips were spread out with 2 days off in between. That made no sense. And I talked to Mike Rhodes about this. Mike says we should not be sitting out here. Now, Super Bowl Sunday, he took them over to the Intuit Dome, and Penn State practiced at the brand-new Clippers Arena. In fact, Ben Simmons was in the arena that day. Wanted me to tell you hi, by the way.
He wasn't teaching him free throws, was he?
You wonder why we get in so much trouble with so many different groups. It's your comments. I mean, you're our Pat McAfee.
He is 3,997 3-point shots away from 4,000. He's getting there.
Yeah. But there should only be, on the West Coast trips, 1 day in between.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, does it put a strain? Now, USC UCLA is one thing. The Oregon Washington thing is a little different because, you do have to make a trip.
Make a trip, absolutely.
You do have to make a trip, whether it's from Seattle to Eugene or vice versa. But you can play your game, get out of there, and be into the next hotel the next day, go and practice at their gym, and then, have the shoot around the next day and play and fly back. But I think you should only need 1 day in between when you do the West Coast trip. Danny Sprinkle of Washington said, quote, "It's going to be really hard for a West Coast team to win the Big Ten regular season because there's just disadvantages with the having to take 4 trips compared to 1. He is correct about that. It would have to take an elite team, kind of like Purdue last year. You better have somebody like Zach Edey in order to withstand something like that. He's not incorrect there. Everybody knows this is difficult on them, right? Until the checks come in. Then out of nowhere, okay, wait a minute.
Make it work.
We got how much? Again, let's go back to the Dick Girardi, Sean Morris, Steve Jones conversation. It's all about the kids.
Darn right. All about those kids. You betcha.
Again, for James Franklin, Mike Rhodes, Pat Kraft, it actually is all about the kids. It is. But at the conference level and at the NCAA level, right, don't you ever let them look you in the face and, it's all about the kids. Oh, no, it's not. I'm smarter than that.
It's all about the kids, but we never thought of a regulation for NIL in any way, shape, or form.
No, travel? No, I don't care if you play it. Like I was telling Cale Sanderson, I said when we were talking about the travel part of it, and I said, Penn State played on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time at USC. I said they got off the plane Wednesday morning at 6:30. He looks at me and goes, oh.
Bob Knight used to throw a fit about it, and he was absolutely right.
Well, that was about the Tuesday games. Right? It was Big Tuesday? Right. Big Tuesday. Right?
Yeah, Super Tuesday, Big Tuesday, Big Monday, whatever it was called. Yeah. It was
Big Monday and Super Tuesday. Yeah.
Yep.
And Big Ten was always on Super Tuesday. Let's see. Michigan State won the regular season title by 3 games, did not have a single player voted first team or second team. I'll admit I did vote one on first team because they won I did. Not going to say who, but I did. He's a good player, especially defensively. Wisconsin coach Greg Gard, in today's era, players are more offensively motivated. No. Do you know how much offense gets taught sometimes by teams? How much of the practices do you think? Yeah, and I can talk to anybody, talking to other announcers, whatever, right? Do you know how much time spent on defense? Over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right? Because the offensive player plays like, all right, here we go.
Exactly.
I'm loving this. He says, not that we weren't before. Well, maybe not you weren't. Greg's teams are far more offensive oriented now, unbelievably. So Greg's done a great job with them. But I think with all the development, the personal trainers, just a lot of things have changed within the game that make you have to be able to score. And he's right about that. If you look at the teams that consistently play deep into the tournament, they've got some pretty good offensive firepower. So some of that comes through NBA-level players. Now, you look at the 3 Final Four teams, 3 of them are dynamic offensive teams. Florida's a dynamic offensive team. Duke is an incredibly dynamic offensive team. Right? Auburn is a dynamic offensive team. We'll talk about Houston later. All right, so, but they're a great defensive
Lock
team.
them down.
Yep. Let's see. So they talk about extended travel. And USC and Washington have each signed 3 top 100 recruits. Oregon and UCLA ended up winning an NCAA tournament game. That helps. Okay? All right? They have 5 trips east. Now, during the regular season, they have 4. Okay? But then you count the Big Ten tournament. That's the 5th one. All right. They say that one trip that is packaged differently can turn into more of a regular season one more regular season victory, maybe the NCAA tournament. The key is to somehow get somebody like Purdue last year that made the third weekend, which Purdue did last year. They made the national championship game. But when you have a conference this spread out, and I do point out, so that people understand, like, oh, the travel is grueling and the whole thing. The trip back from USC, while getting back at 6:30 in the morning, right? The flight was only 4 hours and 10 minutes. I mean, part of it is the game's over. You've got to pack your stuff up. Players get food, whatever. You've got to make the bus trip out to LAX. You've got to go through, I'm trying to remember. I think we did go through some security there, some. You get on the plane, then you got to wait your turn. That process of having, but the actual point A to point B is okay. It was 4 hours and maybe 4:08 coming back, right? Well, what do you think the bus trip is from Rutgers?
Yeah,
it's 4 hours. You didn't quite have the leg room as you do in the plane. Now, on the way out, Penn State had to stop. Stopped in Salinas, Kansas, which is just north of Wichita. Stopped there and refueled. In fact, we were on the ground there for about an hour. I mean, yeah, but you don't care. You're not playing the next day. Nobody cared. Like, okay, great. Right. Then when you get there, it's 3 hours earlier. That's why, you were a stowaway, and all of a sudden I'm looking at like an hour after we landed, you were on Rodeo Drive. You worry me. It's like, why are you in the Christian Louboutin store? It's like, okay. So if you want red bottom sneakers, that's your... All right. Now, the teams... in the Big Ten have really good players. And look, it's not as if Penn State, again, Penn State season is a disappointment. We all know that. All right? Especially when you start 12-2. Right. You're 12-2, you're going to Philadelphia, you've got aspirations. Yet all these games that they were in where they lost by 2, lost by 4, lost by 6, lost by 5, lost by 4, right? It's not as if you're not in the neighborhood. But Mike's going to have an entirely new team coming up. Not entirely. I was out of practice the other day. I saw plenty of familiar faces. But when you look at the Big Ten, remember for the SEC this year, 70% of the starters were seniors. The bottom line is this. You obviously have to have the coaching and the infrastructure. But you also have to have the commitment financially to make this happen. And I'm talking about either roster retention or player acquisition. You've got $20.5 million sitting there. We know football justifiably will get a bulk of that. But you also have to, if you want to be serious about what you're doing to compete within this conference, I don't care whether it's Penn State, whether it's Minnesota, whether it's, okay, you're going to have money there to do it for the players. It really is, sometimes it sounds simple, but you're going to have the money there to do it. I don't want to hear anybody talking about, well, don't throw it away on that. You should be throwing it into whatever your sport happens to be. That's not how a business is run. Okay? You invest in the parts that make money. All right. And then what you have left, you make sure those other parts are taken care of as best you can. I mean, that's a business. Right? Okay. This is not the Shangri-La League. Okay. That's business. Right? There's still going to be other money left over for other things. There is. There still is. Right? But you've got to be able to, football's got to be taken care of. And and no offense, because of the business model, you got to take care of men's basketball. You got to be able to compete with these people. Like Penn State gets to the Big Ten tournament, gets to the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. Well, by winning a game, they earned 2 units. That's $4.2 million for the league. Now they'll spread that out. But in other words, have you done your part? Yeah, you did your part. Right? And Oregon won a game this year. They earned the league $4.2 million. Spread that's over 6 years. That's how much it accumulates. Other sports don't have that. The NCAA distribution, for example, on wrestling, and I think it's the same for women's volleyball, I think, is right around $50,000. Anytime you tell somebody that, they go, no, yeah. Because that TV contract, which is an all-encompassing TV contract from ESPN, it's been increased, it's up to $115 million now. $65 million of it is to women's basketball, which sounds great, but it's pennies on the dollar. The NCAA men's basketball tournament is a $1 billion a year enterprise. $1 billion. That's why you have to have it. All right. Yannick Koenig-Niederhauser putting his name into the NBA draft. Now, he is not listed in any mock drafts right now by anybody. But let me tell you, I think this – you've heard me talk about this before. How many times have you heard me talk about if somebody were to ask me, should I put my name into the NBA draft, what have I always said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's interesting that Taylor Battle started his job yesterday at Penn State. In 2010, Taylor Battle's junior year, he put his name into the NBA draft. And, of course, being new to the process, because Penn State fans had not had a guy put his name into the NBA draft before, early. People panicked, we can't lose him. All he did was, and I talked to him about this at the time, he went out, he worked out for 4 different teams. And guess what he came back with? Evaluations and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
He came back with evaluations and knowledge. He eventually withdrew from the draft. Okay. I recommend anybody that is a good basketball player put their name into the NBA draft, because guess what? They are not there to recruit you.
Right.
They're not there to recruit you. They are there to honestly tell you what they think. So let me give you dates. All right. So everybody has dates as to what's important in all this, because he did say that if he's going to go back to college, it's going to be to Penn State. He was specific about that in his Instagram post. So let me give you the dates as to how it works here. 1, the transfer portal closes April 22nd. So the transfer portal, as it stands right now, has 19 days remaining in it for basketball. April 22nd, the portal closes. So 19 days. Next, the G League Combine is May 9th to the 11th. The NBA Combine, for the guys they really think are going to get drafted, will be May 11th to the 18th in Chicago. And last but not least, the last day to withdraw from the NBA draft is June 15th. All right. So again, because you have a confused look, the audience, of course, has already grasped this.
I got this.
The audience has already understood this, so to all of you out there, I apologize, but like, this guy explain everything. You one guy, just give me one guy. Right? Again, portal closes in 19 days, April 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay. G League Combine, May 9 to the 11th. NBA Combine, May 11 to 18. Last day to withdraw from the draft, June 15th. Okay? Those are the dates to remember. If it works out great for Yannick, he gets picked or thinks he's going to get picked and wants to get great. That's great for him because you want success for your people. Okay? As much as you want people back, I root for success for these people. Now, remember, it is only a 59-player draft. 59. Okay, the Knicks forfeited a pick. So that's why it's not 60. It's a 59-player draft. That's it. There are going to be usually, you've had years where there have been about 125 to 175 players who put their names into the draft that ended up not getting drafted. Yeah. Okay. And that's why this option, that's what the NBA, the way it's done, and part of it's because of the spring academic calendar. It's just so much easier for them to make this work. With football being in a split semester, and if guy wants to transfer, he's got to get himself in to another school by the time they start classes. You know what I mean? It gets a little messy with that. Basketball doesn't have that. That's why it's a better process. And so he can, if he isn't invited to one of the combines, he can still do individual workouts for teams. They can talk to him about what he needs to do. And should he come back to Penn State, they're going to get, I think, a better player for it. There'll be the usual, look, there's always going to be that uncertainty. And I remember with Taylor Battle, there was all that uncertainty. With him. And he kind of felt the entire time he was going to come back. But the fact he's in the process makes people nervous. Okay, Well, I got that. I do understand that. I completely understand that because there is a little bit of a mystery surrounding this right now. But he's making the right move. Now, I talked to him briefly the other day, and we did not talk about this. Okay, all right. But when you're sitting there, number one, okay, he did not declare for the draft and flush his eligibility. Okay? All right? And, this is, that's one of the parts you have to remember. He did not flush his eligibility. He's retaining his eligibility. Okay? Okay? Because right now, I think one of the keys when you're looking at what round you go, the magic number a lot of times in the NBA is 35. I know it's a 59-player draft, but if you can get yourself into the top 35, because Dick and I talked about this yesterday. If you get into the 35, you got to go. You really do. I know it's 30 first-round picks, but like those first 4 or 5 picks, if you're an underclassman outside of the 35, which now brings in the mystery of who knows, the stash and play guys, which never end up playing. Have you noticed the stash and play guys don't play?
Never play.
They draft some European guy in the second round. He's a stash and play, and right. Then years later, are they still stashing him? I'm just asking.
Tuna Kukoc is about the only one I can think of and remember that actually did play. And
right.
Petrovic wasn't a stash and play, was he? I don't think so.
He just signed.
Yeah. Best international player of all time, in my opinion. Unfortunately, didn't get to see him entirely, but an entire career.
Best international.
Well, you know what? Dirk's got to be in there.
I mean, Tony Parker?
Yeah, Dirk's got to be.
Right.
Petrovic was just so talented.
Manu Ginobili.
Ginobili, yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of guys.
And there's more coming. Luka?
Yeah, Luka, obviously, yeah.
Great player.
Yep. Petrovic had so much talent. That was it was sad, obviously.
Right. LeBron's from overseas, right? No, I'm just kidding.
He might be Canadian one day. I'm not sure.
No.
Joel Embiid's been in about 4 different countries, right?
Yeah. LeBron's from Akron. So
Hakeem technically is Nigeria.
Yeah, but
he was American more so because he went to Houston.
He went to college here at Houston. There's been a lot of more and more European players. I mean, Jokic.
Yeah. Forgot about. How did I forget about Jokic? Forget about a 2-time MVP. Should be a 3-time MVP. Yeah, I gotta truly retract my statement about Petrovic. That guy was unreal. Don't get me wrong, but my goodness, nobody's Jokic. Nobody touches Jokic. Oh my God. As good as Luka is, I would put Jokic above him. Complete player, I would put Jokic above him.
I forgot about Jokic.
Forgot about the 2-time MVP. It should have been 3-time MVP. Could be 4-time after this year. Well, no, Shigel just
forgot about his point guard who had a triple-double.
That's right.
Jalen Pickett.
Yeah.
Give me one, just please.
Jokic with a triple-double. He scored 61 points.
Even let me talk to the wall. just let me talk to the wall. Something.
Yeah, I gotta have to retract my statement from earlier. Forgetting about a 2-time MVP that is should be about a 3 or 4-time MVP and one of the best players I ever saw play the game, hands down, without question. Yeah. Page is another guy that I thought was real good. Not on the level of the names we're naming here, but
again, back to Yannick. Look, it is what he should be doing. All right, if he were to have come to me, and they're not, the players aren't going to come to you. I'm just saying, if you're in that, right, if I were you, I'd go through and find out what they say. And I'm allowed to, because guess what? Yeah. The feedback that you get
100%
is invaluable.
It can get you better. Sure.
If you want to be the player you hope to be, the feedback that you get from the next level tells you what you need to do to get there. And that's, that I think that's a positive for him. And it's, look, does Mike want him back? Of course he does.
Sure.
But Mike also wants his players, right? Like Bones Highland, okay, played for Mike. He was a first-round pick, right? Guys make the league. You're proud of it.
Absolutely.
Right? Penn State's had Pickett in the league, got a triple-double, right? Seth's been in the league. Lamar's been in the league. Josh Reeves has been in the league. Yeah. Guess what?
Frazier.
Okay, Tim Frazier spent 9 years in the league. Right? You want that. Right? That, Just like you want Abdul Carter to be in the league and Tyler Warren to be in the league, and you want to see Kobe King make the league, and you want to see KJ Winston make the league, and Jay Reed. You go through the long list. Sal Wormley. You want them all to make the league. Now, I realize that as a fan, you'd like to see them do it on your timetable. Come back one more year, now make the league. That I understand. I do understand that. All right. Well, that wraps it up for today. This may have been one of your worst shows.
You got to accept that in the final 10 minutes.
Yeah.
My sincerest apologies to the Denver Nuggets.
Whose general manager is?
Callum Booth.
From?
Penn State.
And you don't even know who their players are.
I know who he is.
Unbelievable.
Just completely somehow slipped my mind.
By the way, tonight, we'll stick with basketball for a moment. Tennessee Chattanooga plays Cal Irvine tonight for the NIT title. Danny Earl, head coach, Tennessee Chattanooga. He and I exchanged text messages last night, and I'm thrilled for him. I think Danny is a great guy. One of the absolutely great guys you've ever been around. Great family. And you know what? He's a terrific coach. He has stepped into that. He did a lot of VMI. He has stepped into this Tennessee Chattanooga program. I'd love to see them win the NIT tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's Danny Earl. He'll be on the sideline tonight, Hinkle Fieldhouse. He is not going to measure the baskets. You need to get yourself together.
That's right.
As soon as I brought up this Trey Lance thing, I could tell your entire game was thrown off.
That's what it was. It was
thrown off, I tell you.